Time, the only value that really matters in Trackmania. In Trackmania, the only thing that truly matters is the time you'll have at the end of a race. Most Trackmania races last around 1 minute, but in practice there is much more to it than that. The map you're looking at contains 1840 turns and takes around 3 hours to complete, which leads us to ask, what is the longest track buildable in Trackmania? If you end up liking the video, please consider subscribing. It's free and it helps me out a lot. Before we get started, let's set up the rules. First of all, I'll only be using vanilla blocks. In other words, I won't be installing any external mode to have access to different blocks. What's more, I have the option of increasing the size of the terrain up to 255 cubed. That's the maximum size of a Trackmania template. The third rule is actually not a rule, but I'll give you a result to the nearest thousandths of a second, and I think you'll be surprised. The YouTuber Virtual that made a video on the map I mentioned earlier. As I said, this map takes about 3 hours to complete. In fact, he made a video about it that I recommend you watch. But after all, it's a pretty short one. How about this map, which exists and takes about 62 hours to complete? This map is largely inspired by the previous one, but this time it spans 31 floors. Now let's take a step back from this existing map to theorize the longest Trackmania map. The track you're looking at triggers the cruise control block at the start of the race and spans around 47 blocks. Except that in Trackmania, when the car is at a standstill and moves forward with the cruise control block, it will go all the time at a minimum of 2.36 km an hour. That's why by building a track like this one, the car can just do this. The cars travel with the cruise control effect at the speed of 2 km an hour and finally takes several tenths of minutes to complete the track. To simplify the rest of the video, I'm gonna start rounding off the results. With this rule in mind, we can say that the car travels 47 blocks in 39 minutes. But here, the cars only cover one straight line. On this terrain of 48 blocks by 48 blocks, the basic dimension of a Trackmania stadium, if we were to use the same system to repeat a race, the car would not have to cover 48 blocks but 2304 blocks, and would therefore take almost 32 hours to complete the race. Let's pause for a moment and return to rule number 2. What did I say? That I had the right to increase the field size up to 255 cubed, the maximum dimension of a Trackmania field. Thanks to an external program called OpenPlanet, you can achieve this dimension. This means going from 48 blocks by 48 blocks to 255 blocks by 255 blocks. To give you an idea, that's more than a month. Here, we are talking a lot about theory, but you'll see that the end result will be much shorter than you probably think. So far, we've been talking about the cruise control block, which enables the car to maintain a stable speed. But do you know what this block is? It's called the no engine block. In normal gameplay, this block turns off the car's engine until it encounters a reset block or reaches the next checkpoint. So, on a uphill like this one, the car slows down and is about to come to a full stop, but when it encounters the next checkpoint, it can take off again at full speed. But then, what happens when a car is at a standstill? What would be logical is for the car to come to a complete stop. But look closely. Here the speed of time is multiplied by 10, and we can see that the car is moving forward very slightly. So, thanks to this technique, it can do this. The cars travel 1 block in about 2 hours, the small 47 block circuits from earlier in 94 hours, the 48 blocks by 48 blocks terrain in 4608 hours, and the largest Trackmania terrain 255 blocks by 255 blocks in almost 15 years. So far, all these races can be built without crashing the game, but now we're about to enter the final stage before the game crashes. But don't worry, I repeat once again, the end result will be quite different from what you imagine. The multi-lap block forces the car to complete several laps before validating the race. To validate a lap, you have to pass through all the checkpoints of the map and then return to the multi-lap block. Once all the laps have been completed, the map is finally finished. You can change the number of laps to be completed in the race parameters. This number can be as high as 2,147,483,647, and we'll explain why in a few minutes. But even if we enter this number, the race will be completed after 255 laps. The question is why? Imagine that the number of laps to be completed is just stored in a box. The game then has to look at what's in that box to know whether the race should be completed or not. However, the number of laps to be completed is only stored in one octet. One octet contains 8 bits, that's 8 zeros or ones, and in binary, these numbers full of ones represent 255. In short, the box cannot contain a number greater than 255, so if the number of laps to be completed is greater than 255, the race will be considered complete at the end of the 255th lap. By the way, this is the same system used for the dimension of a field in Trackmania. As I explained earlier, the maximum dimensions are 255 cubed. In practice, this is because each dimension is stored on one octet. Thanks to everything we've just seen, we can build this race. This race triggers the freewheel effect on the car right at the start, and then it has to go through 32 blocks to reach the checkpoint. The checkpoint is there to avoid shortcuts and to make sure the car has made a complete lap before going back to the multi-lap block. Just below the cruise block, there is a reset block, which resets the car's freewheel effect. As a result, the car is left with the cruise control effect for 2 blocks, as this is the only way for it to climb the little rise that's present just after and prevents the car from going backwards right from the start to make a shortcut. In summary, this race is like that just to prevent all shortcuts, but the cruise control blocks effect doesn't save the car that much time. So in this race, the car must cover 34 blocks with the freewheel effect and 2 blocks with the cruise control effect, but must complete a total of 255 laps. And by increasing the size of the terrain, you can achieve this. Until now, it's been possible to build these races without crashing the game, but now we are going to get into theory with races that wouldn't be physically buildable. Why limit ourselves to a single floor when in theory we could do it on 255 floors? If we did that, the race would last around 964,664 years. But again, the result will be quite different from what you imagine. Look at this race. We have to do 3 laps, but in reality, how many laps does the car have to do? It has to get the checkpoint ring on the left, then respawn, then get the checkpoint ring on the right, and finally finish the 4th lap. So it's as if the car has to complete 6 laps. But this can drastically increase our race time, as we go from 255 laps maximum to 510 laps maximum. But is 510 laps really the maximum? Because by repeating this system a second time, it's possible to place 4 checkpoint rings. And in fact, it's possible to place a gigantic number of them, several thousand. Take a look at this year counter, it's about to exceed 1 billion. Will it really exceed it? No. And that's only because of one thing. That's due to the game time rule. There are a few subtleties in Trackmania's game time rule, so we are going to replace it with our own game time. But don't worry, it won't change anything. Game time is a value used to count time in Trackmania. Every millisecond, its value is incremented by 1. For instance, for this race lasting 1 minute, 18 seconds and 796 thousandths of a second, the game time value will be 78,796. Let's again take the example of our box, but this time the box is much bigger, so we are going to put it in blue and make it bigger. What do I say it's bigger? Because this time it doesn't contain an octet, but an integer. Unlike an octet, an integer can store a huge number of values. Its minimum value is -2 to the power of 31, and its maximum value is 2 to the power of 31 minus 1. If we transform them into their decimal form, we get -2,147,483,648 and +2,147,483,647. These are the minimum and maximum values for game time. So, thanks to this, all Trackmania races can be played, but when the value becomes too large, it goes like this. Is this the longest race that can be created in Trackmania? Yes, but wait, because we still have a few questions to answer. First of all, you should know that it used to be possible to display this value in a matter of seconds. So you didn't have to wait 24 days for it to be displayed, and here is how it was possible to do it. By placing a start block, a multi-lap block and a checkpoint block at the same place, the race took less than 0 seconds to be completed. Thus, the return time is invalid and the race cannot be completed. However, if you put in 152 laps, for example, the multi-lap blocks will be triggered and once again the race will be completed with a negative time. But that's not always the case, because if you repeat the operation several times, after a while the race will be validated with a positive time. At that point, the author time will be 200ths of a second. The bug that was present before in Trackmania was that in this situation, if you launched the race in online mode and validated the race with a negative time, the time displayed in the ranking was 596 hours, 31 minutes, 23 seconds and 647 thousandths of a second. I'd never seen this bug before and I think I'm the one who discovered it, but unfortunately I don't have any screenshot of that moment. Now we are left with just two questions. What's the longest track buildable and what happens after 596 hours, 31 minutes, 23 seconds and 647 thousandths of a second? For the first question, this race of just 2 blocks is the longest track that can be created in Trackmania. Surprising as it may seem, but after all we explained, it actually makes sense. Because in this race, the car has to go back and forth between the multi-lap block and the checkpoint, and do so for 255 laps. Now, what happens if the maximum time is exceeded? Well, nobody really knows, because nobody ever tried it out. But the 3 main hypotheses would be as follows. Either the game crashes, or the author time will be defined as invalid and the race could not be completed, or the time would be negative, just like what we saw just before. Whatever the outcome, if anyone is ever crazy enough to leave their computer running for almost 25 days, will know the answer. Thank you all for watching this video. If you like this video, please consider subscribing, it helps me out a lot. And join my Discord server, the link is in the description. It's discord.io/cact.